Well, hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here, and I don't know if you can tell where I am, but I'm not in Kansas anymore, or Minnesota for that be the case. So I'm sitting here today and just talking a little bit about Paris, France. And here I am with the only firearm I'm able to carry to protect myself. It was kind of interesting earlier. We did see a group of paramilitary types all decked out, just waiting for whatever. This has been somewhat of a dangerous city over the course of the last 5 years. But in this town, if you want to protect yourself with any kind of firearm, keep in mind there is no Second Amendment here. You're not allowed to own a pistol or a handgun without some kind of very specialized permit. But it's not going to keep me from enjoying the trip. As you can see, kind of a famous landmark in the background, and just enjoying the time here. Absolutely. So you see, this is a closed subway station. While we were visiting Paris, there was a nationwide strike that affected a lot of transportation, things of that nature, over retirement pensions, things of that nature. The French are known for being a very strike-friendly, big labor kind of country. And so what you see here is deployed law enforcement just ready for anything that could happen in terms of violence that is associated with the strike. There really hasn't been a lot of that. So this particular demonstration was taking place at the site of where the Bastille had stood. And so I guess that has some symbolic purpose. And here we're looking at, this is actually in the lobby of the Louvre. And these are folks who work at the Louvre who are in support of their big labor strike. And because of that, portions of the Louvre were closed. About everywhere we went, we saw armed security, whether it was of the National Police or if it was a military wing, and all of them were carrying automatic weapons, at least select fire. This is in front of just a neighborhood church. There's nothing significant about it, but this is Christmas morning, and there's 5 soldiers in front, decked out, ready, it looks like, to go into full battle mode if need be. So not anything you'd normally would expect to see in front of church, but there you go. Now this is northern Italy. We stayed with some friends for about 5 days, and I have to say, by contrast, we saw just one police officer. He was carrying a Beretta 92, and he was smoking a cigarette. So that was about it. Anyway, back to France and looking at the Louvre. You think of stuff like the Mona Lisa and all that kind of stuff when you think of the Louvre, but they also have some really, really cool examples of highly crafted weaponry. This particular rifle is a 1700s design, and here's a pistol, which I can't even imagine what something like this would fetch in an auction and private sale, in this condition especially. I just couldn't imagine it. But to look at the level of intricacy, the level of craftsmanship, the quality of the wood, I was just blown away by this. I mean, this doesn't look like something you'd actually use in battle. And in a lot of cases, stuff like this was owned by nobility, by people that were highly wealthy, and it was more of to show off than for functionality. We did get a chance to visit Versailles, and at Versailles, you kind of gain a perspective of the amount of decadence and the amount of excess and the amount of greed that the royals in France had. And ultimately, it cost them. We'll get to that in a second, but you look around and, here you got people that are starving to death, and then you've got a small group of people that are living with this kind of decadence, with these kind of gardens in a palace that is just too big to even describe. I mean, I can't even, by panning with this video shot, give you a fair representation of how huge this place is. And of course, the attitude of the folks living there was let them eat cake. The attitude of the people living outside was different. It cost them their heads and was a big part of the French Revolution. So you'd think they'd learn their lesson, but no, along comes Napoleon, and he's not just their leader, he becomes emperor and deity-like. I did get a chance to look at the Museum of the Army in France. Huge place. This is a shot from the top of the Eiffel Tower. It's also the place of Napoleon's tomb. He was quite the character, obviously, and quite militaristic. The French have this very long history with the military, with conquest, with colonization, things of that nature. And then, of course, being involved in awful world wars. So, I mean, the history's there. This is a great collection of toy soldiers and cavalry. And as you go through the museum, pretty much every period since the firearm was introduced in Europe, you see multiple examples that are represented. You could easily spend 2 days if you really wanted to view every exhibit in detail. Uniforms, firearms, you name it. And this is clearly a country, and here you're looking at some American stuff, a Winchester. This is clearly a country that has a relationship with the firearm. There's a Colt that was used because they didn't make revolvers as good as the U.S. did. But more additional examples, you get into some of their World War I stuff. You move into World War II. That's a Smith & Wesson right there. There's a German submachine gun that was kind of between the war periods. And, of course, everybody knows about the MP-40, often called the Schmeiser. And here's a Russian submachine gun. So they show stuff from all the allies and enemies alike. And, of course, the M1 Garand, which should be and appropriately is identified as an important weapon by the French. Looking at the M1 carbine there, they do a really good job of properly honoring and respecting the United States, as well as the British and others for their role in liberating their country from the Germans. And like I said, an excellent job of that. Speaking of the Germans, there's an STG-44 and their great revered leader, de Gaulle. You would think a country that has been invaded by the Nazis and been through what they have been through would have a higher degree of firearms ownership for private citizens, but they've kind of gone the opposite route. So we basically enjoyed restaurants. We enjoyed the sights that you see in Paris. You name it, I like to do the photography, so everything from the strange to the bizarre to the cool, the architecture, absolutely beautiful. If you like churches, France is a great place to visit. Man, they've got churches galore. Did I mention that they have churches in France? Did I mention that they also have a lot of good restaurants? I think I did mention that they have a lot of folks who are running around with rifles and things of that nature. This is at a Christmas market, and this is me enjoying myself at a sidewalk cafe. We all know, of course, about the iconic Eiffel Tower. Like I said, lots of cool stuff, but I can't have my pistols there without a lot of regulation. I can't shoot my semi-autos. That's actually a French-made Walther, but got to come back to the good old U.S. of A., where the churches are smaller. The ammunition available for the citizens is plentiful, and for that reason, France is a great place to visit, but I can honestly tell you that I wouldn't want to live there. Anyway, this is Dr. Drake 63 saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.
Thank you, merci beaucoup.